Mastering your audiobooks doesn't have to feel overwhelming, or at least it shouldn't feel overwhelming. You don't need 20 plugins or hours of tweaking settings to get that professional sound. Today, I'm breaking down the 5 essential tools you only need. These are the plugins that I've used on thousands of audiobooks, and they're going to get you to sound polished, professional, and ready to upload to whatever site that you're uploading to, whether that's ACX or somewhere else. Before we jump in, let me share something that I'm super excited about. This is for you if you are a PANA member, or better known as Professional Audiobook Narrators Association member. I want to invite you to join me in one of the webinars that are happening this month, actually in just a couple of days. If you've ever wondered how to build a solid, efficient relationship with your post-production team, or if you're just looking for tips on working better with editors, engineers, and proofers, then this is the perfect event for you. As in this video's upload on January 30th, please join me for an exclusive free session hosted by the Professional Audiobook Narrators Association. Best practices for working with your post-production team. I'll be deep diving into the secrets of effective collaboration with your post-production crew, whether you're working directly with them or through a publisher. Trust me, this is going to be a game changer for anyone who wants to take their audiobook production to the next level. Now, this is for PANA members only, so if you're not a PANA member, definitely sign up. Then you can sign up for this event. I'm going to include a link down below because this is your chance to level up your audiobook production with some of the best in the business. Not just me, there are other events happening throughout the year. Let's get into the 5 plugins you only need. First up is compression. Think of it like having a volume control that automatically adjusts in real time. Imagine you're watching a movie, right? When the action gets loud, the volume pulls back slightly. Then when the dialogue gets soft, it brings it up. That's essentially what compression does for your voice in an audiobook. It keeps everything balanced and consistent, so your listener isn't constantly adjusting their volume. And here's how it works. The threshold on a compressor is like setting a trigger point. Any part of your voice that's louder than that, it gets compressed. The ratio tells the compressor how much to reduce the volume once it passes the threshold. For audiobooks, you can easily use a 4:1, 6:1, or even an 8:1 ratio, depending on your dynamic range of your narration. If your story has lots of dramatic shifts, whispering one moment or shouting the next, you'll want a higher ratio to keep everything in check. But if your narration is more steady, like a nonfiction title, then a 3:1 or a 4:1 ratio is probably all you need. The attack and release on a compressor are also key. Attack controls how quickly the compressor reacts to the loud sounds. For narration, a slower attack around 10 to 20 milliseconds can keep your voice sounding really natural, and it avoids cutting out the initial clarity of your words. And release is the exact opposite of attack. It controls how quickly the compressor lets go after the sound drops below the threshold. A medium release usually works well, giving your voice a smooth, flowing quality. So here's an example. Without compression, those louder peaks in your narration might jump out and distract your listener. But with it, the volume stays consistent, which helps the story shine without technical distractions or throwing the listener off, really. The key to compression, or any of these plugins I'm going to mention, is that it's a tool, not a crutch. It's there to control dynamics, not to completely flatten them. Keep your adjustments subtle enough that your narration feels polished, but still alive and engaging, so it has that dynamic range. Next is the expander. Now you want to think of this tool like it maintains the balance in your quieter moments. It helps control the quieter parts of your recording, like room tone, soft breaths, or faint background noises, by gently lowering their volume without cutting them out entirely. It's a way to keep your recording clean and natural without feeling like it's overly processed and cutting out everything. An expander works like the opposite of a compressor. Instead of bringing sounds closer together, it gently pushes quiet noises further away. It's kind of like saying, hey, if it's not loud enough, just fade those parts out a little bit more. This keeps your pauses feeling natural while cleaning up the unwanted noise. And unlike a noise gate, which can feel harsh and robotic, an expander is softer and a lot more forgiving. So set the threshold so it catches low-level sounds like faint breaths, but doesn't mess with the tone of your narration. You don't want it cutting into your actual voice. That's when things can start to sound artificial, like a pulse, if that makes sense. Now, plugin number 3 is EQ. If compression is like the glue, holds everything together, then EQ is like the sculptor. This is where you get to shape your voice to sound warm, crisp, and professional. To not overcomplicate EQ, it basically has 3 main areas to tweak: the lows, the mids, and the highs. The lows are the bass frequencies, below 150 Hz. For most narrators, this is where you're going to cut away any rumble or boominess. Then we've got the mids, and the mids live between 250 Hz to 2000 Hz. This is where the body of your voice lives, but it's also where boxiness can live, and the thing that I hate the most, which I have a video on, is the nasal range. And then finally, we've got the highs. Anything above 4000 Hz, boosting here can add clarity and presence, but go easy because it can cause a lot of harshness as well. You're narrating an audiobook, not recording a pop vocal, so you want everything to still sound as natural as possible. And as a pro tip, always cut before you boost. If your voice sounds muddy, cut the lows first instead of boosting the highs. Less is more when it comes to EQ, and that's exactly my approach. Also, it doesn't hurt to have my narration EQ guide to help sculpt your voice. So if you don't have that already, you can pick that up at thehomeaudioproject.com/EQ, and it will teach you everything you need to know about how to adjust your voice. Sibilance is one of those sneaky things that can ruin an otherwise great narration. Those harsh S sounds that feel like they're stabbing your ears. That's what a de-esser is for. A de-esser acts as a focused tool in your audio chain, targeting and controlling the harsh S sounds without affecting the rest of your narration. Most of the time, you'll find sibilance living between 5000 Hz and 10,000 Hz and above, but it does depend on your voice. So just dial it in until those S's sound like you're softening them without giving yourself a lisp. And the last and 5th plugin you need is the limiter. This is the last step in your mastering chain, and it's basically your safety net. But more than that, it controls your sound, brings your level up so you get that publish-ready sound and volume, while hitting the recommended target loudness for your listener. It makes sure nothing in your narration clips or distorts when it gets loud. Now, in terms of ACX standards, set your ceiling to -3. Then after that, the only thing you need to do is adjust your threshold to raise the volume, and then you're good to go. The limiter will catch any of the stray peaks that might slip through that your compressor didn't catch. Just don't rely on it. If you're slamming your limiter, it's a sign that you need to fix something earlier in your chain. I do want to throw in some honorable mentions that I actually recently started implementing into my mastering routine. Covering them really quickly, it's all about cleanup. If you are using iZotope's RX tools, like spectral denoise or mouth declick, these should be your first step in your mastering chain. They're designed to handle specific issues before you even touch your main 5 plugins. Here's how this works. RX Mouth Declick is perfect for getting rid of those annoying mouth noises, lip smacks, clicks, and all of the stuff that we didn't notice when we were speaking, but it can be super distracting for your listener. RX Spectral Denoise helps tame consistent background noise, like a faint hum or an air conditioner, or if you just have a really crappy sounding room, and it will keep your voice sounding natural. If you're using these, start with them before moving to the main chain. Think of it as prepping your surface before painting. You want to clean the mess up in your audio before you add those finishing touches. Once you've cleaned your audio up first, then you can move on to compression, EQ, and the rest of your chain. It makes everything work so much better, and you'll end up with a cleaner, more professional final audiobook. So there you have it. 5 essential plugins for audiobook mastering: compression, expander, EQ, de-esser, and a limiter. No normalization. It is literally the worst. I have a video on that. I'll have linked up in the cards to check that out. If you need some extra cleanup, be sure to add in the Isotope RX tools to your toolkit. Then you're all set to go. So with that, don't forget to grab my narration EQ guide at thehomeaudioproject.com/EQ. And more importantly, this week, if you are a PANA member, don't miss out on this week's webinar. I'll be teaching on best practices for working with your post-production team. It's a perfect way to sharpen your skills in collaborating with editors, engineers, and proofers. So I will drop a link for you to register to that below. So be sure to check it out. I really hope to see you there on January 30th at noon to 1:30. But with that, I hope you have a great rest of your day. I hope to see you on January 30th, and I'll see you in another video real soon.